Hi, you read the title, so let's talk. I mostly want to talk about the Shocks backline now because I made a comment about the Outlaws backline pretty long ago. I want to say like a month or two ago, where basically I was like, I don't know why Jake is playing because Juvie I feel like can do a lot more, a lot better. And this is kind of going to be, I mean, it's morely focused on the Shock backline, but it's also going to kind of be focused on something that I think Skewed is doing a lot better, as well as something that I guess I kind of have a criticism of for FD God, so it's all going to be, I guess, kind of wrapped up in this. So, I guess to talk about it, I personally don't hate the idea of a Violet Twilight backline. I think they've been doing pretty well. The only thing that I think they really need to work on is their consistency, as far as when I'm watching a fucking a Shock VOD, I know that Violet and Twilight are going to be playing. Who's playing what, I do not know. I never know if Twilight feels like playing BAP, or maybe Violet feels like playing BAP the same way he did last year, or just what's really happening at this point. But I mean, more or less, the thing that gets juggled around more than anything, I feel like, is the Brig, which I can start to maybe check the Brig out a little bit after this whole man, I always want to call it a split, but this kind of like season or whatever, hopefully I can check that out more. But where this ties into Skewed and FD God, for that matter, is from a competitive aspect. When, and this is something that I'm going to personalize a lot, because I'm very passionate about being a competitor, and a very good competitor at that. So with that being said, I personally, if I'm on a team and maybe I'm the third man, maybe I'm the next one in line, where I have to work a lot harder, or I'm made to be somewhat of a one trick. That was this position Skewed was in. Skewed was picked up in, Deepe addressed this in his video at the very beginning of the season, that Skewed was picked up specifically for Brig and BAP. Now, we haven't seen a lot of Skewed BAP, but we've obviously seen more than enough of Skewed's Brig. But what I think is now interesting is, based off this most recent Gladiators game, we've seen Skewed Mercy, which, a lot of people would probably just say is because Skewed, they need to have the option to go to Brig. I think there's something more here than that, because when I also, going back to the Deepe video, which again was a really good fucking video at the beginning of the year, but basically, I think this shows how hungry and how competitive Skewed is, and less about just how good Skewed is at Brig, or just so happens to be at Brig. I think this is something that we're really seeing is like a competitive nature, and that's why it's such a breath of fresh air for people to see Skewed step up to the plate, and not only step up, but step up and perform beyond expectations as far as either Brig goes, or I haven't checked the Mercy, but I'll just assume the Mercy is like average, which is already better than Moth. So keeping that in mind, we are now talking about a Korean on OZ Gaming, which was bottom of the fucking barrel in terms of Korean contenders last season, or last year, or whatever. And now, due to their sheer determination, because again, going back to the Deepe video, Deepe said, we picked up Skewed and this guy was a fragger, and like his attitude was, even though I'm getting picked up as a sub, I'm gonna work hard enough to be a starter. And what is Skewed doing now? Starting over Moth, which I think is so cool and interesting for not only Skewed, but just for, I guess, the competitive perception of people in general, which is something that I think is lacking, to tie this back around to Shock, in FD God. Now, why I don't think that this is lacking very much, and even Juby, I think, is starting to fall into place on this, where I mentioned in the video, I kind of jumped the gun, actually. I think I got there too early, because I talked about Jake versus Juby and how I think Juby is more well-rounded. I think I see more holes, more mistakes in Jake's gameplay, and the only upside would be the leadership, which I believe is not insanely teachable, but comms is something that I think in general is teachable. But what I'm very confused about, but also like, I mean, this whole thing makes me very mixed with how I feel, because I think that someone like an FD God and someone like a Juby can do so much if they put everything into it. But as soon as they get boxed in, you have two decisions to make as soon as you get put in a box. Or you have two choices that you can make as soon as you get put in a box. If people put you in a box, and this is again a specialized box for FD God and Juby, in this case of being, these guys are just Lucio one tricks, so we're just going to keep them on the bench until Lucio gets unbanned. You can take that as one of two ways. You can either take that as, you know, maybe everything isn't as good as I thought it was. Maybe I should, you know, take a step back and actually see where everyone else is and why I'm not matching up to them. Or the complete opposite, and have what I believe has been called a quote-unquote warrior's mentality, or a competitor's mentality, I guess, in being like, okay, these motherfuckers are not better than me at, like, just in the example of Juby, Jake is not better than me at Brig, and he damn well ain't better than me at Mercy. So I'm gonna fucking show him. Then anytime that you get a chance to play, you then overperform. And I think that's the kind of split that we're seeing. That's also why I think Moth has started shying away from not really not learning Brig, but like Moth just has not been able to pick up Brig somehow. And with that being said, you now have to, again, make that choice. Do you want to pick up Brig? Do you want to put all this time into Brig, into BAP, into whatever? Even though that doesn't seem like a lot, you know, for someone that is supposedly competing at the top level, you would assume, you know, maybe that's a lot to bear on someone. And you have those multiple people for that reason. But if you are then getting put in the sub, you can either make this a competitive thing between you and the other person, being like, who's gonna work harder for the sub spot, which is why I'm thinking Skewed has probably passed Moth at this point. We heard Moth at the, or not Moth, but we heard Deepe say that Skewed at the very beginning was determined to be a starter, and that's what he's done. And that's where Moth has still fallen short, which is very interesting. And again, tying this all back up into Shock, I think there's potential with both FD God and Juby with being well-rounded. I haven't seen enough of their gameplay on every character to see, as well as since they're not playing a lot more recently, I then am having to, I don't really have much to go off of, but I'm very much hoping in the very, very near future, or sometime in the off season, if we do like the Owl team tournaments, like the little one-off tournaments, I think that'd be really cool to see the improvements that those two are making. But I mean, that's about my thought on it. I mean, I also do want to look at both Violet and Twilight's Brigs in the future, so stay tuned for that, I guess. As well as, I mean, I'm probably gonna look at tubas, probably gonna look at just all the people that are just getting kind of thrown on it. But anyways, I appreciate the fuck out of you for watching this video, and I mean, if you want to know whenever I upload, follow me on Twitter at Demented, and I will see you when I see you. Later.